The scorching sun beat down on the dusty streets of Lordsburg, New Mexico. As Olivia Parker clutched her son's small hand for the last time, his tiny fingers still warm though his chest no longer rose with breath. The summer of 1878 had brought more than just unbearable heat to the small frontier town. It had delivered a merciless fever that swept through like wildfire, claiming the lives of 12 townsfolk, including her precious 4-year-old boy, Samuel. "Please, Samuel," she whispered, her throat raw from hours of sobbing. "Please open your eyes." But the child remained still on the small bed, his golden curls damp against his forehead, his cheeks no longer flushed with fever but pale in death's embrace. "Doctor." Henderson placed a weathered hand on her shoulder. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Parker. We did everything we could." Olivia didn't respond. She couldn't. The words remained trapped in her chest, buried beneath the mountain of grief that had suddenly fallen upon her. Just 3 days ago, Samuel had been running around the yard chasing butterflies, laughing as they fluttered just beyond his reach. Now, he would never laugh again. The doctor quietly packed his medical bag. "I'll send word to Reverend Collins. The burial should be soon, given the heat." The word burial pierced through Olivia's fog of despair. Her child, her beautiful, bright-eyed boy, would be placed in the ground. The finality of it crushed her already broken heart. "I'll leave you to your mourning," Dr. Henderson said softly, closing the bedroom door behind him. Alone with her son, Olivia gathered Samuel into her arms one last time. She rocked him gently, as she had done countless nights when he was a colicky infant, when teething pains woke him, when thunderstorms frightened him. She hummed the lullaby she'd sung to him since his birth, her voice cracking on each note. "Sweet dreams, my little one," she whispered, pressing her lips to his forehead. Outside her small clapboard house on the edge of Lordsburg, life continued. The distant sound of horses' hooves on packed dirt, the call of a vendor selling goods from his wagon, the laughter of children playing, all of it seemed obscene now. How dare the world continue when her son was gone? Olivia Parker had known hardship. At 28, she had already weathered more storms than most women twice her age. 5 years earlier, her husband Thomas had been killed in a mining accident, leaving her alone and pregnant in a town where a woman without a man was considered little more than a burden. She had survived, though. She had taken in laundry, sewed dresses, baked pies for the hotel restaurant, whatever it took to provide for herself and her unborn child. When Samuel arrived, squalling and red-faced, he had given her purpose. Every callus on her hands, every ache in her back, every moment of exhaustion had been worthwhile because of him. He was her sun, her moon, her entire sky, and now the light had gone out. The preparations for the funeral passed in a blur. Neighbors brought food she couldn't eat. The Reverend spoke words she couldn't hear. The tiny coffin, crafted by Mr. Wilson the carpenter, seemed an abomination, too small, too final, too wrong. The day they laid Samuel to rest was brutally hot, the kind of heat that shimmered above the ground in waves. Olivia stood at the graveside, straight-backed and dry-eyed, having cried all the tears her body could produce. She wore her black dress, the one she'd made after Thomas died, now taken in at the waist since grief and hardship had whittled her frame to sharp angles and hollow spaces. The small cemetery at the edge of town held too many graves for a place so young. Miners killed in accidents, children lost to disease, victims of the occasional lawlessness that plagued all frontier towns. And now her Samuel would rest there too, beneath a small wooden marker that Mr. Wilson had carefully carved with his name and dates. Samuel Thomas Parker, 1874–1878. "The Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away," Reverend Collins intoned, Blessed be the name of the Lord. Olivia bit the inside of her cheek until she tasted blood. What kind of God would give her a child only to snatch him away? What lesson was she meant to learn from this cruelty? As the first shovelful of dirt hit the coffin with a hollow thud, Olivia turned away. She couldn't watch. She walked back toward town alone, ignoring the sympathetic glances and whispered offers of company. She needed solitude, needed to wrap herself in the quiet of her empty house, and try to understand how she would continue to draw breath in a world without Samuel. The days that followed blended together in a haze of grief. Olivia moved through her small house like a ghost, touching Samuel's toys, folding his clothes, staring at the empty bed where he used to sleep. She tried to work, taking in mending from the hotel, but often found herself staring at the needle in her hand, unable to remember what she was meant to do with it. Neighbors checked on her, brought food, offered company. Mrs. Abernathy from the general store insisted she eat. Sheriff Jenkins made sure her woodpile was stocked. The women from the church took turns sitting with her. But none of it touched the cold, empty place where her heart had been. A week after the funeral, Olivia found herself at Samuel's grave before dawn. She'd taken to visiting in the early morning hours when the cemetery was deserted, when she could speak to her son without witnesses to her pain. "I dreamed about you last night," she told the small mound of earth. "You were running through a field of wildflowers, laughing." She placed a small wooden horse, Samuel's favorite toy, at the base of the marker. "I miss your laugh the most, I think." The sound of approaching hoofbeats made her stiffen. She quickly wiped her eyes and composed her features. Lordsburg was a small town, and she knew the people meant well, but she couldn't bear another pitying look or well-intentioned platitude. A rider appeared on the path leading to the cemetery, a tall man on a chestnut mare. Olivia recognized him vaguely as one of the cowboys who worked at the Morgan Ranch to the north. She'd seen him in town occasionally, though they'd never spoken. To her surprise, he dismounted at the cemetery gate and entered on foot, leading his horse. In his free hand, he carried a small bundle of wildflowers, bright yellow and purple blooms that somehow managed to thrive in the harsh desert climate. He approached slowly, giving her plenty of time to leave if she wished. When she remained by the grave, he stopped a respectful distance away. "Mrs. Parker," he said, removing his hat. "I hope I'm not intruding." His voice was deeper than she expected, with a gentle quality that contrasted with his weathered appearance. His sun-browned face bore the lines of a man who spent his days outside, and his hands were calloused and strong. But his eyes, a clear, steady blue, held nothing but kindness. "Mr." she prompted, realizing she didn't know his name. Maxwell Kimble," he said. "I work at the Morgan Ranch." "You're not intruding, Mr. Kimble," she said stiffly. "The cemetery is open to all." He nodded, his eyes drifting to the small grave marker. "I heard about your boy," he said quietly. "I'm sorry for your loss." The words were ones she'd heard countless times over the past week, but something in his tone made them feel genuine rather than obligatory. Still, she wasn't sure why this stranger had sought her out. "Thank you," she said, the politeness automatic. "But we weren't acquainted, Mr. Kimble. You didn't know my son." He looked down at the flowers in his hand. "No, madam, I didn't have that honor." He hesitated, then continued. "I lost my little sister to fever when I was 12. She was just 4, like your boy. It was a long time ago, but I still remember how it felt, how it still feels." The simple honesty in his words caught Olivia off guard. Most people spoke of grief as something to be overcome, a storm to be weathered. Few acknowledged it as the lifelong companion it truly was. Maxwell Kimble took a step closer and carefully laid the wildflowers at the base of the grave marker, next to Samuel's wooden horse. "We will remember him," he said softly. That's all any of us can do for those we've lost, carry their memory forward. Olivia felt tears welling in her eyes again, though she'd believed herself cried out. "Thank you," she whispered. He stood there a moment longer, head bowed, then put his hat back on. "I won't keep you from your grieving, Mrs. Parker. I just wanted to pay my respects." As he turned to go, Olivia found herself speaking. "His favorite color was yellow," she said, gesturing to the bright blooms. "Like sunshine, he used to say." Maxwell smiled, a gentle expression that softened his weather-beaten features. "My sister loved yellow too, said it made her happy just to look at it." They stood in silence for a moment, two strangers connected by nothing but shared grief. "Good day, Mrs. Parker," he finally said, tipping his hat. "Good day, Mr. Kimble." She watched him lead his horse back through the cemetery gate, mount up and ride away. Only then did she notice that her heart was beating a little faster, that the crushing weight on her chest had lightened just a fraction. The flowers he'd brought were desert blooms, tough, resilient things that could survive with little water and harsh conditions. As she touched one delicate yellow petal, Olivia wondered if perhaps she might be able to survive too. Summer gave way to fall, and the oppressive heat finally broke. Olivia continued her daily visits to Samuel's grave, sometimes finding fresh wildflowers there that she hadn't placed. She knew who left them, but never managed to catch Maxwell Kimble in the act. She began to work again, taking in more laundry and mending, even accepting an offer to help at the schoolhouse 3 days a week. The pain didn't lessen, but she learned to carry it differently, to make space for it in her life without letting it consume her entirely. One October afternoon, as Olivia walked home from the schoolhouse, she saw a familiar chestnut mare tied outside the general store. She hesitated, then continued past, only to hear a deep voice call her name. "Mrs. Parker." She turned to see Maxwell Kimble emerging from the store, a small package tucked under his arm. "Mr. Kimble," she acknowledged with a nod. "You're looking well, madam," he said, though his eyes noted the shadows beneath hers, the way her dress hung loose on her frame. "Thank you, I'm managing." She gestured to the horse. "You're in town for supplies," he nodded, "and to deliver a message to the telegraph office for Mr. Morgan. The ranch keeps me busy, but I try to make it to town when I can." The unspoken reason hung between them: his visits to the cemetery, the flowers he left. "I appreciate the flowers," she said finally. "Samuel would have loved them." Maxwell's expression softened. "I'm glad. There aren't many blooms left now that the weather's turning, but I'll keep my eyes open for the hardy ones." Olivia found herself wanting to prolong the conversation, surprising herself. "Do you have family in the area, Mr. Kimble?" He shook his head. "No, madam. My parents passed years ago and my brothers are all back east. I came west after the war and never quite made it back." "The war?" she asked, though she could guess which one. He looked to be in his mid-30s, old enough to have fought. "Yes, madam. Union cavalry." He didn't elaborate and she didn't press. A gust of wind blew down the street, carrying dust and the promise of cooler weather. Olivia shivered slightly. "You're cold," Maxwell observed. "I shouldn't keep you standing in the street." "It's fine," she said quickly. "I don't mind the conversation." He smiled, and Olivia noticed how it reached his eyes, crinkling the corners. "Perhaps next time I'm in town, we could have coffee at the hotel restaurant. Might be more comfortable than the middle of the street." The invitation was offered casually, respectfully, with no pressure behind it. Still, Olivia felt a moment of panic. It had been over 5 years since she'd sat across a table from a man who wasn't the reverend or the doctor. "Just as neighbors," Maxwell added, seeming to sense her hesitation. "I know you're still grieving." The simple acknowledgement of her loss, stated plainly without pity, decided her. "Coffee would be nice, Mr. Kimble, thank you." I'll be in town next Tuesday bringing cattle to the stockyard. Would around 2 o'clock suit you?" Olivia nodded. "Yes, that would be fine. Until Tuesday, then." He tipped his hat, untied his horse, and mounted. With a final nod, he rode out of town, the sound of hoofbeats fading into the distance. Olivia continued home, her mind turning over the brief encounter. It wasn't until she reached her front door that she realized she had gone nearly an hour without thinking of Samuel, and the realization brought both relief and a fresh wave of guilt. How could she experience even a moment's respite from grief? What kind of mother was she? She opened the door to the silent house, Samuel's absence hitting her anew. His wooden block still stacked in the corner, his small coat hanging by the door, the empty chair at the table where he used to sit, swinging his legs and chattering about his day. "I miss you, my love," she whispered to the emptiness. "Every moment of every day." That night, Olivia dreamed of Samuel. He was playing in a field of wildflowers, laughing as butterflies danced around him. When he looked up at her, his eyes were bright and healthy, no trace of fever in his flushed cheeks. "It's okay, Mama," he said clearly. "You can be happy again." She woke with tears on her cheeks, but for the first time since his death, they weren't entirely tears of sorrow. Tuesday came, and Olivia found herself taking unusual care with her appearance. She wore her blue dress, not the black one she'd worn almost exclusively since Samuel's death, and pinned her hair more carefully than usual. The woman in her small mirror looked thin and tired, but her eyes had lost some of the hollow emptiness of recent months. At precisely 2 o'clock, she entered the hotel restaurant. Maxwell Kimble was already there, seated at a table by the window. He stood when he saw her, pulling out a chair with a courtesy that spoke of good upbringing despite his rough exterior. "Mrs. Parker," he greeted her. "Thank you for coming." "Mr. Kimble," she responded, taking the offered seat. They ordered coffee from the waitress, and an awkward silence fell. It had been so long since Olivia had engaged in social conversation that she hardly knew where to begin. Maxwell broke the ice. "I saw a family of rabbits on the ride in this morning. Made me think of your boy. My sister used to love watching the wild rabbits." Instead of causing pain, the mention of Samuel brought a small smile to Olivia's lips. "Samuel loved animals. He used to beg me for a puppy every day." "And did he get one?" Maxwell asked. Olivia shook her head. "No. I always told him maybe next year when he was a bit older." Her voice caught. "I didn't know we wouldn't have a next year." Maxwell's hand twitched on the table as if he wanted to reach for hers but thought better of it. "We never do know, do we? That's the hardest part." The coffee arrived, steaming in thick white mugs. Olivia wrapped her hands around hers, grateful for the warmth. "Tell me about him," Maxwell said. "If you'd like to, that is." No one had asked her that before. People offered condolences, brought food, spoke of God's will and heaven's gain. But no one had simply asked her to talk about Samuel. So she did. She told Maxwell about Samuel's first steps, about his love of stories, about how he insisted on wearing his favorite blue shirt until it was threadbare. She described his laugh, his stubbornness, the way he would furrow his brow when concentrating on building a tower with his blocks. Maxwell listened attentively, asking questions, smiling at the happy memories, his eyes solemn during the painful ones. In turn, he shared stories of his sister, Elizabeth, who had loved to sing and could charm birds from trees with her gentle manner. Before Olivia knew it, an hour had passed. Their coffee cups had been refilled twice, and the afternoon sun had shifted in the sky. "I've taken up too much of your time," she said, suddenly aware of how long they'd been talking. "Not at all," Maxwell replied. "It's been a pleasure, Mrs. Parker. Truly." As they stood to leave, he hesitated. "I know it might be presumptuous of me, but I'd like to call on you again if I may." Perhaps when I'm next in town. Olivia felt a flutter of something she hadn't experienced in years: nervousness, anticipation, a hint of possibility. I would like that, Mr. Kimble. He walked her to the door of the restaurant. Until next time, then. Olivia watched him stride toward the livery where his horse was stabled, his tall figure straight and confident. She turned toward home, feeling lighter than she had in months. That night, as she sat by the fire mending a tear in one of her aprons, Olivia realized that she had spent an entire afternoon without the crushing weight of grief pressing down on her. The guilt came swiftly. How could she laugh? How could she enjoy conversation? How could she notice the blue of a man's eyes when her son lay cold in the ground? "I'm sorry, Samuel," she whispered to the empty room. "I'm not forgetting you. I could never forget you." But even as she spoke, she remembered her dream, Samuel's voice telling her it was okay to be happy again. Was it possible to honor his memory while still living her life? Could she carry him in her heart without being buried alongside him? These questions followed her through the days that came after. Maxwell Kimble began to appear in town more regularly, and their coffee meetings became a fixture in Olivia's life. They spoke of Samuel and Elizabeth, but also of books they'd read, events in town, memories of their own childhoods. She learned that he had fought at Gettysburg, that he had a talent for breaking wild horses, that he wrote poetry in a small leather notebook he carried in his saddlebag. "Poetry?" she'd asked, surprised. He'd blushed beneath his tan. "Not very good poetry, mind you. Just thoughts that come to me sometimes when I'm riding the range." "Would you share some with me?" she'd asked. He'd hesitated, then pulled out the small, worn notebook. In a low voice, he read a piece about the desert at sunrise, the words simple but evocative. Olivia had been moved by the beauty he found in the harsh landscape. As winter approached, Maxwell began to escort Olivia to church on Sundays when he was in town. The first time they walked in together, she felt the eyes of the congregation on them, heard the whispers, Widow Parker and the Cowboy. She held her head high, ignoring the gossip. Maxwell seemed unbothered, his steady presence beside her a comfort rather than a cause for concern. One Sunday in early December, as they walked back from church through a light dusting of snow, rare for Lordsburg, but not unheard of, Maxwell stopped at the edge of town. "Olivia," he said, having only recently begun to use her first name at her insistence, "there's something I'd like to ask you." Her heart quickened. Over the past months their friendship had deepened into something more, though neither had put words to the change. "Yes," she prompted when he fell silent. He looked unusually nervous, turning his hat in his hands. "I've been offered a position as foreman at the Wilson Ranch over in Silver City. It's a good opportunity, better pay, more responsibility." "Oh," Olivia felt her heart sink. Silver City was nearly 50 miles away. "That's wonderful news. When would you start?" "After the new year," he said. "But the thing is, I'm not sure I want to go." "Why not? It sounds like a fine opportunity." Maxwell took a deep breath. "Because you're here, Olivia. And the thought of not seeing you regularly, of not being able to visit Samuel's grave and leave those flowers he likes, it doesn't sit right with me." Olivia's breath caught in her throat. "Max, I know it's too soon," he rushed on. "I know you're still grieving, and I would never want to replace the place in your heart that belongs to Thomas or to Samuel. But I care for you, Olivia, deeply. And I hoped you might feel something for me too." The snow fell gently around them, dusting Maxwell's broad shoulders and Olivia's bonnet with white flakes. In that moment, with his earnest blue eyes fixed on hers, Olivia felt a surge of something she'd thought she might never feel again: hope. "I do feel something for you," she admitted quietly. "But I'm afraid of caring for someone and losing them again, afraid of what people will say if I allow happiness back into my life so soon after Samuel's death. Maxwell stepped closer, not touching her but near enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. I can't promise you won't lose me someday, no one can make that promise, but I can promise to cherish every day we might have together. And as for what people say, he shrugged his broad shoulders. Let them talk. Anyone who truly cares for you would want you to find joy again. Olivia thought of Samuel, of his bright laugh and loving heart. He had been a joyful child, always finding wonder in the world around him. Would he want her to spend the rest of her life in mourning, or would he want her to find happiness where she could? What are you proposing exactly? She asked, her voice steadier than she felt. I'm proposing courtship for now, Maxwell said. Time for us to know each other better, to be sure of our feelings, and then, if you're willing, I would like to ask for your hand properly. And Silver City, I'll turn down the position. There will be other opportunities, unless, he hesitated. Unless you might consider coming with me, not right away, of course, but eventually as my wife. The word wife sent a tremor through Olivia. To be a wife again, to share her life with someone, to perhaps even have more children someday, these were possibilities she had believed closed to her forever. I don't know if I can leave Samuel, she whispered. Maxwell nodded, understanding. You wouldn't be leaving him, Olivia. He's here. He touched her heart gently. And we would visit, I promise you that, as often as you needed. Olivia looked up into his kind face, this man who brought flowers to her son's grave, who listened to her stories, who read her poetry and made her laugh when she thought she might never laugh again. I need time, she said finally, to think about all of this. Of course, he agreed immediately. Take all the time you need. I'll turn down the position for now. There's plenty of work at the Morgan Ranch still. No pressure, no rush. The relief in his eyes told her he had feared outright rejection, and it warmed her to know how much her answer meant to him. They continued their walk back to her house in companionable silence, the question hanging between them like the snowflakes in the air, delicate, full of possibility, waiting to settle. That evening, after Maxwell had bid her goodbye with a tip of his hat and a warm smile, Olivia sat by her fire and let herself imagine a future different from the lonely one she had resigned herself to. A future with Maxwell Kimble by her side, perhaps with more children running around their feet. The thought brought both joy and fear: joy at the possibility of love and family, fear at the risk of more loss. She took out the small portrait she kept of Samuel, the only one ever taken, when a traveling photographer had come through Lordsburg the previous spring. His serious little face looked back at her, his eyes solemn as he tried to stay still for the camera. "What should I do, my love?" she asked the image. "Is it all right for Mama to be happy again?" No answer came, of course, but as she looked at her son's face, Olivia remembered his generous heart, how he'd always shared his toys with other children, how he'd pick flowers for her when she was tired or sad. Samuel had wanted everyone around him to be happy. The next morning, Olivia woke early and made her way to the cemetery despite the cold. Samuel's grave was dusted with snow, the wooden marker standing stark against the white ground. To her surprise, a small bouquet of winter berries and pine boughs lay at its base. Maxwell must have visited at dawn. "Good morning, my darling," she said, kneeling beside the grave. "I've come to talk to you about something important." She spoke for a long time, telling Samuel about Maxwell, about his kind heart and gentle ways, about the possibility of a new life in Silver City. She told her son about her fears and hopes, her guilt and longing. "I will always love you, Samuel," she said finally, her cheeks wet with tears. "No one will ever replace you in my heart, but I think perhaps my heart is big enough to love others too without loving you any less." As she spoke the words aloud, Olivia felt their truth settle in her soul. Love wasn't finite. It didn't diminish when shared. Her love for Samuel would never fade, never lessen, even if she opened her heart to Maxwell or to other children in the future. She stood, brushing snow from her skirt. "I'll always remember you, my sweet boy, every day of my life." With a lighter step than she'd had in months, Olivia walked back to town. She had a letter to write to Maxwell Kimble. December passed in a flurry of activity. Once Olivia had accepted Maxwell's proposal of courtship, he became a regular visitor at her home. They shared meals, went for walks, attended church together. The townspeople gossiped, of course, but most seemed pleased to see Widow Parker finding happiness again. "You deserve it, dear Mrs. Abernathy told her one day at the general store. "That boy of yours would want to see you smiling again." Maxwell continued his work at the Morgan Ranch, but came to town whenever he could be spared. He brought Olivia small gifts, a ribbon for her hair, a book of poetry they could read together, sweets from the confectioner's shop. But most meaningful were the flowers and tokens he continued to leave at Samuel's grave, showing that he honored the child he had never met. Christmas was difficult for Olivia. The previous year, Samuel had been so excited about the holiday, hanging a stocking, helping her decorate their small tree with paper ornaments he'd made himself. The memory of his joy made the holiday's approach painful. Maxwell seemed to understand without being told. On Christmas Eve, he arrived at her door with a small pine tree and a box of simple ornaments. "I thought perhaps we could decorate it together," he said hesitantly. "For Samuel, and if it's too painful, we don't have to." Olivia felt tears spring to her eyes, but they weren't entirely sad ones. "I would like that very much," she managed. They spent the evening hanging ornaments and telling stories Olivia about Christmases with Samuel, Maxwell about holiday traditions from his childhood in Pennsylvania. When the tree was decorated, they sat before the fire drinking cider, a comfortable silence between them. "Thank you," Olivia said finally, "for understanding." Maxwell reached over and took her hand gently. "I would never ask you to forget him, Olivia. He will always be a part of you, and if I'm fortunate enough to become a part of your life, he'll be a part of mine too." Impulsively, Olivia leaned over and kissed his cheek, her lips brushing against his sun-weathered skin. It was the first time she had initiated any physical contact between them, and Maxwell's eyes widened in surprise before crinkling with pleasure. "Merry Christmas, Max," she whispered. "Merry Christmas, Olivia," he replied, his voice rough with emotion. As the new year dawned, Olivia found herself thinking more seriously about Maxwell's proposal. The idea of moving to Silver City still frightened her, leaving Samuel's grave, starting fresh in a new place, but the prospect of building a life with Maxwell drew her forward. One crisp January day, they rode out to the Morgan Ranch together. Maxwell wanted to show her the work he did, the place that had been his home for the past 3 years. The ranch sprawled across a large tract of land north of Lordsburg, cattle grazing on the winter dry grass, cowboys moving among them with practiced ease. "Mr. Morgan runs a good operation," Maxwell explained as they rode. "Treats his men fair, treats the cattle well. I've learned a lot here." They dismounted near a small ridge overlooking the ranch, and Maxwell spread a blanket for them to sit on while they ate the lunch Olivia had packed. The winter sun warmed them despite the cool air, and Olivia found herself relaxing as Maxwell pointed out different aspects of the ranch. "The Wilson Ranch in Silver City is smaller," he said, "but growing. The foreman position is still open. Mr. Wilson said he'd hold it for me until February if I wanted to reconsider." Olivia looked out over the landscape, the mountains in the distance, the vast open sky. "What's Silver City like?" she asked. "Bigger than Lordsburg, They've got a proper school, a courthouse, even a small theater. The mining operations there bring in a steady flow of people and money. He glanced at her. It might be a good place for a fresh start. Olivia thought about her small house in Lordsburg, filled with memories of Samuel. Every corner held a reminder, sometimes sweet, sometimes painful. The idea of a new home, one without those constant reminders, was both terrifying and tempting. "I'm scared, Max," she admitted. Scared of leaving him behind, scared of forgetting. Maxwell took her hand. "You won't forget, Olivia. Memory isn't tied to a place, and we would visit Lordsburg, I promise you that, as often as you needed." She leaned against his shoulder, drawing strength from his solid presence. I think I could consider it, moving to Silver City with you." Maxwell's arm went around her shoulders, pulling her closer. "Really?" The hope in his voice was unmistakable. "Really," she confirmed. "But I would need time to say goodbye properly, to prepare." "Of course," he agreed readily. "We could aim for spring, perhaps, when the weather's better for traveling." Olivia nodded, a sense of rightness settling over her. Spring would be good, a season of new beginnings. Maxwell turned to face her fully, his blue eyes serious. "Olivia, I need to be clear about something. When I ask you to come to Silver City with me, I'm asking you to come as my wife. I love you. I want to build a life with you, to care for you, to help you find joy again." The word love hung in the air between them. Olivia had known, of course, that his feelings ran deep, but hearing the words spoken aloud made them real in a new way. "You don't need to answer now," he added quickly. "I know it's a lot to consider." But Olivia had been considering it for weeks, turning the possibility over in her mind, examining her own heart. The love she felt for Maxwell was different from what she'd felt for Thomas, quieter, perhaps, built on shared grief and healing rather than youthful passion, but no less real for that difference. "I love you too, Maxwell," she said softly. "And yes, when spring comes, I will marry you and go to Silver City as your wife." His face lit up with such joy that it transformed his features, erasing the lines of worry and work, making him look younger and carefree. He cupped her face gently in his calloused hands. "May I kiss you, Olivia Parker?" She nodded, her heart racing as he leaned in and pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was gentle, reverent, a promise of the tenderness with which he would treat her heart. When they broke apart, Olivia felt a warmth spreading through her that had nothing to do with the winter sun. "We will build a good life together," Maxwell promised. "One that honors the past but looks to the future." As they rode back to town that afternoon, Olivia felt as if a weight had been lifted. The decision had been made, the path forward chosen. There would be difficulties ahead. Certainly grief didn't disappear with a kiss or a promise, but she would face them with Maxwell by her side. Word of their engagement spread quickly through Lordsburg. Most reactions were positive. Olivia had been alone long enough that few begrudged her a second chance at happiness. Maxwell was well respected among the ranching community, known for his honest dealings and hard work. They set a date for early April, giving Olivia time to make arrangements for her house and belongings, and for Maxwell to secure housing in Silver City. The Wilson Ranch included a small but comfortable foreman's cabin that would be their first home together. As the wedding approached, Olivia experienced moments of doubt and fear. Was she betraying Thomas's memory? Would Samuel feel abandoned? Was she moving too quickly? During one such moment of uncertainty, she confided her fears to Mrs. Abernathy while shopping at the general store. "Oh, my dear," the older woman said kindly. "I felt the same way when I remarried after losing my first husband. But you know what I realized? Love multiplies, it doesn't divide. Loving Mr. Kimble doesn't mean you love Thomas or Samuel any less. It just means your heart has grown." The simple wisdom helped calm Olivia's fears. Still, as she prepared for her wedding and the move to Silver City, she spent more time at Samuel's grave, talking to him, assuring him that he would always be her beloved son no matter where she lived. On one such visit in late March, with the first wildflowers beginning to bloom around the cemetery, Olivia was surprised to find Maxwell already there. He was kneeling by Samuel's grave, his hat beside him on the ground, speaking in a low voice. Not wanting to intrude on what seemed to be a private moment, Olivia hung back, but the breeze carried Maxwell's words to her. "Promise to look after her, to honor her love for you, to make sure she laughs every day," he was saying. "And I promise we'll visit often, bring you flowers, keep your memory bright." He paused. "I wish I could have known you, Samuel. Your mother tells such wonderful stories about you. I think we would have been good friends." Tears sprang to Olivia's eyes at the simple, heartfelt words. She made a small noise and Maxwell turned, spotting her. "Olivia," he said, rising quickly, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to intrude on your time with him." She shook her head, moving forward to join him by the grave. "You weren't intruding, I think he would have liked to hear from you." Maxwell put his arm around her shoulders and together they stood looking at the small marker, now weathered by a year of sun and rain. "I meant what I said," Maxwell told her. "We'll visit often, and in our home, Samuel will be remembered and honored." Olivia leaned against him, drawing comfort from his strength. "Thank you for understanding how important that is to me." "Of course I understand," he said softly. "He's your son. He always will be." They remained by the grave a while longer, Olivia telling Maxwell stories about Samuel's antics, both of them laughing at tales of his misadventures. It felt right somehow to share laughter at the graveside, to celebrate the joy Samuel had brought rather than focusing only on the loss. As they finally turned to leave, Maxwell took her hand. "2 more weeks," he said, a smile crinkling his eyes. "2 weeks until you're Mrs. Kimble." "Mrs. Olivia Kimble," she tried the name out. "It sounds nice." "It sounds perfect," he corrected, bringing her hand to his lips. The wedding was a simple affair, held in the small church in Lordsburg. Olivia wore a new dress of pale blue, not white, as this was her second marriage, but beautiful nonetheless. Maxwell looked handsome in a new suit, his usually wind-blown hair tamed for the occasion. Reverend Collins spoke of new beginnings, of God's grace in bringing healing after sorrow, of love's power to transform lives. Olivia and Maxwell exchanged vows in clear, steady voices, promising to love and cherish each other through whatever life might bring. When Maxwell slipped the gold band onto her finger, a simple ring, but of good quality, Olivia felt a sense of rightness, of coming home despite standing in the place she was preparing to leave. "I now pronounce you man and wife," Reverend Collins declared. "You may kiss your bride, Mr. Kimble." Maxwell's kiss was gentle but sure, a promise sealed before God and the community. When they turned to face the congregation as husband and wife, Olivia saw only happiness in the faces of those who had supported her through the darkest time of her life. The small reception was held at the hotel, with food and music and congratulations from townsfolk. Olivia danced with her new husband, feeling lighter than she had in a very long time. "Happy, Mrs. Kimble?" Maxwell asked as they swayed to the music. "Very happy, Mr. Kimble," she replied, smiling up at him. The next morning, before leaving for Silver City, they visited Samuel's grave one last time. Olivia had placed fresh flowers there, not just the yellow blooms Samuel had loved, but a variety of colors, a celebration rather than a mourning. "Goodbye for now, my darling," she told the silent marker. "Mama loves you and will be back to see you soon." Maxwell stood beside her, his arm around her waist. "We'll remember," he said quietly, echoing the words he had spoken to her nearly a year before, when they were still strangers connected only by grief. "We will always remember." As they rode out of Lordsburg later that morning, Olivia looked back at the town that had been her home for so many years. She carried with her memories both painful and precious, but also hope for the future she and Maxwell would build together. The journey to Silver City took 2 days, traveling at a steady pace with their belongings packed in a small wagon Maxwell had purchased. They camped under the stars the first night, Maxwell making a comfortable bed for them and cooking a simple meal over the fire. As they lay side by side, looking up at the vast expanse of stars, Olivia felt a peace she hadn't expected. "It's beautiful out here," she murmured. "Almost as beautiful as my wife," Maxwell replied, drawing her close. Their first night together as husband and wife was tender and unhurried, Maxwell gentle in his loving, Olivia surprised by the depth of her response to him. Afterward, wrapped in his arms beneath their blankets, she felt truly content for the first time since losing Samuel. They arrived in Silver City the following afternoon. The town was indeed larger than Lordsburg, with more businesses and people, a bustling energy that spoke of growth and opportunity. Maxwell drove the wagon through the main street, pointing out landmarks to Olivia: the school, the church, the mercantile where they would shop. "And this," he said as they turned onto a smaller road leading out of town, "is the Wilson Ranch." The property was well maintained, with sturdy fences and healthy-looking cattle grazing in the pastures. They passed the main house, where Mr. Wilson and his family lived, and continued to a smaller cabin set a little apart from the bunkhouse where the ranch hands stayed. "Here we are," Maxwell announced, pulling the wagon to a stop. "Our home." The cabin was modest but sound, with a small porch across the front and windows on all sides. Maxwell helped Olivia down from the wagon and, to her surprise, swept her into his arms. "Welcome home, Mrs. Kimble," he said, carrying her across the threshold. Inside, Olivia found the cabin had been prepared for their arrival. The floors were swept, the windows clean, a vase of wildflowers on the small table. There were 2 rooms, a main living area with a cookstove and table, and a bedroom with a new bed frame and mattress. "Mr. Wilson's wife arranged for the flowers and helped me get the place ready," Maxwell explained, watching Olivia's face anxiously. "Is it all right?" "I know it's smaller than your house in Lordsburg." "It's perfect," she assured him, meaning it. The cabin was small but cozy, and most importantly, it was theirs, a place to begin their life together. They spent the rest of the day unpacking their belongings, arranging the cabin to suit them. Olivia hung curtains she had sewn in the windows, placed her cooking utensils in the kitchen area, made up the bed with linens from her hope chest. On a small shelf in the bedroom, she placed the portrait of Samuel and a carved wooden horse that had been his favorite toy. Maxwell watched her do this without comment, but when she had finished, he came and put his arms around her from behind. "He belongs here with us," he said simply. Olivia leaned back against him, grateful beyond words for his understanding. That evening, they shared their first meal in their new home, a simple stew Olivia prepared while Maxwell tended to the horses and unpacked the last of their things. Sitting across the table from her husband, Olivia felt a sense of beginnings, of possibilities stretching before them. "Tomorrow, I'll introduce you to the Wilsons and the other families at the ranch," Maxwell said as they ate. "Mrs. Wilson is looking forward to meeting you. She doesn't have many women to socialize with out here." "I'll look forward to that," Olivia replied. She had worried about making new friends in Silver City, about starting over in a community where no one knew her history. "And on Sunday, we'll go to church in town. The Reverend there is a good man from what I've heard during my visits." Olivia nodded, then hesitated. "Max." Do you think we might be able to visit Lordsburg in a month or so? For Samuel's birthday. Maxwell reached across the table and took her hand. Of course, Olivia. I told you we would visit whenever you needed to. Samuel's birthday is important, we'll be there. The simple acceptance, the lack of questioning or reluctance, confirmed for Olivia what she already knew: she had married a good and understanding man. Life on the Wilson ranch settled into a pleasant rhythm. Maxwell's duties as foreman kept him busy from dawn until dusk most days, but he always returned to the cabin with a smile and a kiss for his wife. Olivia made their small home comfortable, cooked meals that earned Maxwell's enthusiastic praise, and began to make friends among the ranch families and in town. Mrs. Wilson, a kind woman in her 40s with a practical manner and warm heart, became a particular friend. She had lost a child herself years earlier and understood Olivia's ongoing grief in a way many others didn't. "It never goes away completely," she told Olivia one afternoon as they worked together preserving fruit. "But it changes, becomes something you can carry without being crushed by it." Olivia found this to be true as spring turned to summer. The sharp edges of her grief had softened, allowing her to remember Samuel with more joy than pain most days. She still had moments of overwhelming sadness, times when she would find herself weeping unexpectedly. But Maxwell was always there to hold her, to listen, to remind her that healing wasn't a betrayal. In late May, as promised, they traveled back to Lordsburg for Samuel's birthday. They stayed with Mrs. Abernathy, visited with old friends, and spent long hours at the cemetery. Maxwell had carved a small wooden butterfly to place at Samuel's grave, a symbol of transformation and enduring beauty. "He would have been 5 today," Olivia said as they sat by the grave. "Old enough for school in the fall." Maxwell nodded, his arm around her shoulders. "He would have been the brightest one in his class, I bet." "He would," Olivia agreed, smiling through her tears. "He was already learning his letters when—" She trailed off, unable to complete the sentence. "When he had to leave," Maxwell finished gently. "But he's still teaching us, isn't he? Teaching us about love and memory and how to go on." The simple truth of this observation struck Olivia deeply. Samuel was still teaching her about resilience, about finding joy again, about carrying love forward. "Thank you," she said, leaning against her husband, "for bringing me here, for understanding." "Always," he replied, kissing the top of her head. When they returned to Silver City, Olivia felt a shift within herself. Lordsburg would always be important. It was where Samuel rested, where she had built her first life, but Silver City was becoming home. The cabin she shared with Maxwell, the friends she was making, the routines they were establishing together, all of it was taking root in her heart. One evening in early July, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset, Olivia took Maxwell's hand. "I have something to tell you," she said, her voice trembling slightly with nervous excitement. Maxwell turned to her, eyebrows raised. "What is it, love?" "I'm going to have a baby," she said, the words still new and fragile on her tongue. "In February, the doctor thinks." Maxwell's face transformed, joy and wonder spreading across his features. "A baby, we're going to have a baby," Olivia nodded, tears filling her eyes. "Are you happy about it?" "Happy," he repeated, gathering her into his arms. "Olivia, I'm overjoyed, a child, our child." His unabashed happiness eased the anxiety Olivia had been carrying since suspecting her condition. She had worried about how she would feel carrying another child when Samuel was gone, worried that Maxwell might think she was trying to replace her lost son, worried about 1,000 things that now seemed to fade in the light of her husband's joy. "I was afraid," she admitted as Maxwell held her. "Afraid to be happy about it, afraid of losing this baby too." Maxwell drew back to look into her eyes. It's natural to be afraid after what you've been through, but Olivia, this baby is a blessing, a gift, and whatever happens, we'll face it together." He placed a gentle hand on her still flat stomach. "Hello in there, little one," he said softly. "Your mama and I can't wait to meet you." The simple gesture brought fresh tears to Olivia's eyes. "I love you, Maxwell Kimble," she whispered. "And I love you, Olivia Kimble," he replied. "You and our child both." As her pregnancy progressed, Olivia found herself experiencing a complex mixture of emotions. Joy at the new life growing within her, gratitude for Maxwell's constant support and excitement, anxiety about potential complications, and a bittersweet sadness that Samuel would never know his little brother or sister. She spoke to the baby about Samuel often, usually when she was alone, telling stories of the big brother who would have loved them so much. Sometimes Maxwell would overhear her and join in, adding his own thoughts about what Samuel might have taught the new baby: how to spot rabbits in the brush, how to build the tallest tower with blocks, how to charm their mother into an extra cookie. In October, they made another trip to Lordsburg. Olivia's pregnancy was showing now, her dresses let out to accommodate her growing belly. Standing at Samuel's grave, her hand resting on the visible evidence of new life, she felt the full circle of existence: loss and renewal, grief and joy, endings and beginnings. "I'm having a baby, Samuel," she told the marker. "You're going to be a big brother. I wish you were here to help us welcome them, but I promise they will know all about you." Maxwell had brought fresh flowers, as he always did, arranging them carefully at the base of the marker. "We remember you, Samuel," he said, "every day, and this little one will know their brother through our stories." The visit brought more peace than pain, a confirmation that Olivia's heart had indeed expanded rather than replaced its prior loves. She returned to Silver City ready for the months ahead, for the challenge and joy of bringing a new life into the world. Winter came early that year, with cold winds sweeping down from the mountains by November. Maxwell worked tirelessly to ensure their cabin was warm and comfortable, adding extra insulation, stocking firewood, making sure Olivia had everything she needed as her mobility decreased with her advancing pregnancy. Christmas was a quiet but happy celebration. They decorated a small tree, exchanged modest gifts, and shared a special meal with the Wilson family. Under the tree was a hand-carved cradle Maxwell had been working on in secret, a beautiful piece crafted from pine with delicate scrollwork along the sides. "Oh, Max," Olivia breathed when he unveiled it on Christmas morning. "It's beautiful." "I wanted our little one to have something special," he said, running his hand along the smooth wood. "Something made with love." Olivia thought of Samuel, of the simple wooden toys Thomas had carved for him, of the joy those handmade treasures had brought him. "This baby is already so loved," she said, taking Maxwell's hand and placing it on her rounded belly. "So very loved." As January brought deeper cold and occasional snow, Olivia's thoughts turned increasingly to the birth ahead. Mrs. Wilson, who had delivered 5 children of her own, provided practical advice and reassurance. Dr. Harrison in Silver City was experienced and well-regarded, which eased some of Olivia's anxiety. "Everything looks to be progressing normally," the doctor told her during a checkup in late January. "Another 3 weeks or so, I'd say." Maxwell, who had insisted on accompanying her to the appointment despite the teasing he'd received from some of the ranch hands, squeezed her hand in relief. "Our February baby," he said with a smile. But babies, as Olivia well knew, kept their own schedules. Just 5 days later, in the middle of a particularly cold night, she woke to the distinctive pain of contractions. "Max," she said, shaking her husband's shoulder. "It's time." Maxwell was instantly awake, moving with a calm efficiency that belied his inner nervousness. He stoked the fire, helped Olivia into a comfortable position, and rushed to the main house to send one of the ranch hands for Dr. Harrison. "Too fast," Olivia gasped as another contraction gripped her. "The baby's coming too fast." Maxwell's eyes widened with alarm, but he kept his voice steady. "Mrs. Wilson will be here any minute. She knows what to do until the doctor arrives." True to his word, Mrs. Wilson arrived moments later, tying an apron around her waist as she entered. "Well now, let's see what we have here," she said, all business. The next hours passed in a blur of pain and effort for Olivia. Mrs. Wilson proved an excellent midwife, guiding her through the contractions, providing encouragement and practical help. Maxwell remained by Olivia's side, holding her hand, wiping her brow, murmuring words of love and support. Dr. Harrison arrived just as dawn was breaking, by which time Olivia was fully in the grip of labor. "Looks like I'm just in time," he observed, rolling up his sleeves. "You're doing wonderfully, Olivia," Maxwell told her as she panted through another contraction. "So strong, so brave." The pain was immense, but different from the pain of grief. This was productive pain. Pain with purpose. Pain that would bring new life rather than mark its end. Olivia focused on that thought as she pushed, drawing strength from Maxwell's presence and the knowledge that soon they would meet their child. Just as the first rays of sunlight streamed through the bedroom window, a lusty cry filled the cabin. "A boy, Doctor," Harrison announced, holding up the squalling infant. "A fine, healthy boy." Maxwell's face crumpled with emotion as he looked at his son. "A boy," he repeated in wonder. "Olivia, we have a son." Mrs. Wilson efficiently cleaned and wrapped the baby while Dr. Harrison attended to Olivia. Within minutes, the child was placed in his mother's arms, his tiny face red with the effort of his arrival, his fists waving in indignation at the cold world he'd entered. "Hello, my love," Olivia whispered, counting fingers and toes, marveling at the perfection of his small features. "Welcome to the world." Maxwell sat on the edge of the bed, one arm around Olivia, the other hand gently stroking his son's dark hair. "He's amazing," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You're amazing." The doctor and Mrs. Wilson discreetly left the new family alone once they were sure all was well. In the quiet of the early morning, Olivia and Maxwell gazed at their newborn son, hearts full to bursting with love for this new life they had created together. "What shall we name him?" Maxwell asked softly. They had discussed names but had made no final decisions, wanting to meet their child first. Now, looking at the baby's serious expression, Olivia knew what felt right. "I'd like to call him Thomas Samuel Kimble," she said. "For both the men who came before him." Maxwell's eyes filled with tears. "Thomas Samuel," he repeated. "It's perfect." Little Thomas Samuel, called Tommy by his parents, thrived in the love that surrounded him. He had his father's blue eyes and strong build, but his mother's gentle temperament and patience. He grew quickly, a happy, healthy child who filled the cabin with laughter and life. Maxwell proved to be a devoted father, as Olivia had known he would be. He would carry Tommy in a sling while doing his lighter duties around the ranch, telling the baby about the horses and cattle, pointing out birds and clouds and distant mountains. In the evenings, he would rock Tommy to sleep, singing old songs from his Pennsylvania childhood in his deep, soothing voice. Watching them together, Olivia felt a completeness she had feared might never be hers again after losing Samuel. The ache of his absence never fully disappeared. There were still days when grief would catch her unawares, moments when she would see something that reminded her sharply of her first son and feel the loss anew. But these moments no longer overwhelmed her. Instead, They became part of the tapestry of her life, threads of sadness woven among the brighter colors of joy and love. When Tommy was 6 months old, they made another journey to Lordsburg. The trip was easier now, with Maxwell having purchased a small covered wagon that provided better protection from sun and dust. They stayed longer this time, allowing their Lordsburg friends to meet the newest Kimble and showing Tommy the town where his mother had once lived. Of course, they visited Samuel's grave. Maxwell had crafted a new marker of sturdy oak to replace the weathered wooden one, carving Samuel's name and dates with careful precision, and adding a small relief of a butterfly at the top. "Samuel," Olivia said as they stood by the grave, Tommy balanced on her hip, "this is your brother Thomas Samuel. Tommy, this is your big brother." She touched the marker gently. "He would have loved you so much." Maxwell placed a bunch of wildflowers by the grave. "We remember," he said quietly, the words that had first connected them now a sacred promise between them. "We will always remember." Tommy, too young to understand, nevertheless reached out a chubby hand toward the flowers, babbling happily. Olivia smiled through her tears, seeing in that innocent gesture a connection between her sons, one earthbound, one heavenly, but both forever in her heart. As they prepared to return to Silver City, Olivia took one last look at Samuel's grave. The new marker stood strong against the elements, the butterfly symbol catching the light. She no longer felt that she was abandoning him by living elsewhere, by loving Maxwell and Tommy, by finding happiness again. Samuel was with her always, his memory a blessing rather than a burden. Life continued to unfold in Silver City. The Wilson Ranch prospered under Maxwell's management, allowing him to eventually buy a small property of their own just outside town, not a working ranch, but a comfortable home with enough land for a garden, some chickens, and a few horses. Olivia started a small dressmaking business, working from home while caring for Tommy and, eventually, his siblings. For indeed, the Kimble family grew. 2 years after Tommy's birth, Olivia gave birth to twin girls Elizabeth Grace and Margaret Rose, named for Maxwell's sister and Olivia's mother. 3 years after that came another boy, James William. Each child brought new joy, new challenges, new dimensions to their family's love, and always, Samuel remained a presence in their home and hearts. His portrait hung in the family room alongside pictures of his siblings. His wooden horse was preserved and passed down to Tommy when he was old enough to understand its significance. Stories of Samuel were shared often, keeping his memory alive for children who never had the chance to know their oldest brother. Twice, each year without fail on Samuel's birthday, and on the anniversary of his death, the family made the journey to Lordsburg to visit his grave. As the children grew old enough to understand, they participated in these pilgrimages, placing flowers, saying prayers, hearing stories of the brother who had gone before them. "Mama," Tommy asked once when he was about 6, "does Samuel know about us? Does he know he has brothers and sisters?" Olivia, touched by the question, gathered her eldest living child close. "I believe he does, my love. I believe he watches over all of you." Maxwell, overhearing, added his own thoughts. "Your brother Samuel is part of what made our family possible," he explained. "His memory helped your mama and me find each other, and in a way, that means he helped bring you and your sisters and brother into the world." This explanation satisfied Tommy and later, the other children as they grew old enough to ask similar questions. Samuel became not just a sad memory, but an integral part of their family story, the beloved first son whose short life had ultimately led to so much love. Years passed, as they always do. The children grew, the Kimble home expanded, Silver City changed and developed around them. Maxwell's position as a respected rancher and community member brought new opportunities. Olivia's dressmaking skills earned her recognition beyond the local area. Together, they built a life rich in love, purpose, and connection. On what would have been Samuel's 18th birthday, Olivia and Maxwell made the journey to Lordsburg alone, the older children staying behind to watch the younger ones. The small town had changed over the years, but Samuel's grave remained the same, lovingly tended, the oak marker weathered but still strong, much like the couple who stood before it. 18 years, Olivia murmured, placing the customary wildflowers at the base of the marker. He would be a young man now. Maxwell, his hair now streaked with gray but his blue eyes as kind as ever, put his arm around her. He would make us proud, just like Tommy does. They stood in contemplative silence for a moment, each lost in thoughts of what might have been. Then Maxwell spoke again, his voice gentle with the wisdom of years. "When I came to you that first time, bringing flowers and saying we would remember, I had no idea how much those words would shape our lives," he said. "But I've never regretted a moment of the journey they started." Olivia leaned against her husband, drawing strength from his steady presence as she had for so many years now. "Nor have I," she replied. "The grief was unbearable then, but you helped me carry it. You made room for Samuel in our life together instead of asking me to leave him behind." "How could I not?" Maxwell asked simply. "He was your son. He is your son. And in a way, he became mine too, the son I never met but loved through you, through the stories, through the connection we've kept alive all these years." Olivia's heart swelled with gratitude for this man who had helped her rebuild her life from the ashes of loss, who had understood from the beginning that love wasn't diminished by remembering but enriched by it. "We did it, didn't we?" she said softly. "We remembered. Through everything, the good times and the hard ones, the births of the children, the building of our home, we kept our promise." "We did," Maxwell agreed, his arm tightening around her. "And we always will." As they turned to leave the cemetery, walking hand in hand back toward the town and the journey home to Silver City, Olivia felt the presence of Samuel walking with them, not as a heavy shadow of grief, but as a bright thread of love woven permanently into the fabric of their family. The path ahead would continue to unfold, children growing and finding their own ways, grandchildren eventually joining the family circle, more years of work and love and life stretching before them. Through it all, the memory of a small boy with golden curls and a bright laugh would remain, honored and cherished, a reminder that love transcends even death's boundary. "We will remember." 4 simple words that had built a bridge between loss and healing, between the past and future, between two hearts seeking solace in a harsh and beautiful world. 4 words that had grown into a life, a family, a legacy of love that would endure long after those who first spoke them were gone. As the sun dipped toward the western horizon, painting the desert landscape in gold and amber, Olivia Parker Kimble walked forward into the future with her husband beside her, and all her children, both present and absent, held safely in her heart, remembered and beloved, always and forever.